Harper woke up to the soft sound of the wind tapping gently against the bedroom window. The bed beside her was empty. The pillows remained untouched, with no sign that Cole had slept there. She reached out, brushing her fingers against the cold space where he used to lie. It had been 2 days, 2 long days, since he left, carrying a small suitcase with only a few clothes and a look she couldn't quite understand. He hadn't said where he was going, and she hadn't had the strength to ask. She sat on the bed, surrounded by silence. The house, once filled with laughter, conversations, and dreams of the future, now felt hollow. All that remained were echoes of memories, distant and fading. Harper glanced at the clock on the bedside table, but time felt frozen, suspended in place. Slowly, she got up and trudged to the kitchen. The coffee maker sat untouched, a quiet reminder that nothing in the house was the same. As she prepared her coffee, her thoughts drifted. She remembered the day she met Cole at a noisy university cafe. He had been shy but persistent, showing up day after day just to steal a glance at her. She smiled at the memory of their first date, a simple walk in the park, where he nervously held her hand. His palms had been sweaty, but the gesture was sincere, filled with promise. They were young and full of dreams, believing their love was unbreakable. Marriage had been the happiest chapter of their lives, at least for a while. Cole's playful and optimistic nature always made Harper laugh, even on the hardest days. He was a light, and she was his anchor, keeping him grounded when his ambitious projects seemed to take on lives of their own. For years, they complemented each other perfectly, moving in harmony. Arguments were rare, and when they did happen, they were small bumps in the road, never anything that felt like a real fall. But what once felt light had started to grow heavy. At first, it was the usual struggles, overdue bills, broken promises, and neglected chores. Then, the little annoyances piled up. Words became sharper. Nights ended in silence, each of them turning away from the other. Then came the decision to have children. At first, it was exciting. They dreamed together, discussing nursery colors, baby names, and what it would be like to see each other reflected in a new life. But as the months passed and the tests kept coming back negative, hope turned into quiet despair. Harper tried to hold on, but with each failed attempt, she felt more defeated. Cole, always the optimist, kept saying there was no rush. But to Harper, his words felt empty, as if he didn't fully understand the weight of it all. Tests and doctors' visits eventually revealed the truth. Harper had feared the worst, that her body wasn't capable of conceiving. And that was when everything truly began to fall apart. Cole wanted talk, to explore alternatives. We can adopt. We can try treatments, he had suggested, holding her hand gently. But Harper had turned away. She couldn't even look at him without feeling guilty. If she truly loved him, how could she condemn him to a life without children? How could she deny him the chance to be a father? The distance between them grew quickly. Harper stopped talking about the future. She avoided his touch. At first, Cole tried to be patient, giving her space. But soon, his patience turned to frustration. "You need to talk to me," he urged one night after she had spent hours in silence, staring blankly at the television without really seeing it. "Talk about what, Cole?" she snapped bitterly. "Every time you look at me, I feel like a burden. I can't stop thinking about what you're giving up." "I'm not giving up on anything, Harper. I chose you, but I didn't choose to be like this." The tension between them had been growing for months. Arguments became part of their daily life. It didn't take much to start one. The sound of the alarm clock, a dish left in the sink, forgetting an important date. But deep down, Harper knew the fights weren't really about those trivial things. They were about everything left unsaid. Then one day, Cole stopped trying. He stopped arguing, stopped slamming doors, stopped raising his voice. And in many ways, that silence hurt more than any fight ever had. Harper felt a tightness in her chest. The pain of knowing it wasn't a lack of love that had pushed them apart. It was exhaustion, the sheer weight of fighting for something neither of them was sure they could save. Now, she sat alone in the apartment that had once been theirs. Her eyes drifted to the envelope on the kitchen table, the lawyer's name printed in stark, cold letters. Today, they would sign the papers. Today, Their 10-year marriage would officially come to an end. The morning in the lawyer's office passed in a haze. Harper sat quietly, her heart heavy, her thoughts swirling. Across from her, Cole looked confused, hurt, yet resigned. The lawyer, a middle-aged man with thin-rimmed glasses, read to the terms of the agreement in a monotone voice that felt distant, as if it belonged to another world. Harper gripped the pen so tightly her fingers ached. She glanced up. Cole was staring at her. His gaze was intense, so piercing it sent a shiver down her spine. For a brief moment, she almost faltered. She almost told him everything, almost begged for help. But then she remembered the lonely nights, the words left unsaid, the weight of everything they both kept locked inside. She hardened her resolve. That's when Cole spoke. "Stop, Harper. Don't sign that." His voice was urgent, but soft. "I know you're sick." The world seemed to stop. The air vanished from the room. Harper's breath caught in her throat. "What did you just say?" Harper managed to stammer, her voice trembling. Cole leaned in, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know you have cancer." The lawyer glanced between them, clearly bewildered by the sudden shift in conversation. Harper felt the color drain from her face. Her heart pounded wildly against her ribs. "You're imagining things," she whispered, avoiding his gaze. But deep down, she knew it was futile. Cole had always been able to read her, even when she tried to hide the truth. "I'm not," he replied softly. "I found the test this morning when I went to get my things from the apartment." Earlier that day, Cole had gone back to their old apartment to collect his remaining belongings, ready to move on. While searching through a drawer, he had come across an envelope from a medical clinic. Curiosity had let him open it, and inside, he found the test results. Uterine cancer. The ground beneath him had seemed to vanish. He read the words over and over, trying to process what they meant. Harper was sick, and worse, she had been facing this alone. In that moment, Cole realized that the real threat wasn't their divorce. It was the possibility of losing her forever. Something inside him shifted. He couldn't let her go through this alone. Not after everything they had shared. Back in that cold office, Harper closed her eyes, the tears she'd been holding back finally spilling over. "You shouldn't have gone through my things," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You shouldn't have kept something like this from me." Cole shot back, his voice louder than he intended, raw with emotion. "My God! Harper, did you really think I would let you go through this on your own?" She didn't respond immediately. How could she explain the paralyzing fear that consumed her? How could she put into words the terror of becoming a burden? Of watching love shift into something that felt like duty or obligation? "What do you want me to say, Cole?" She finally spoke, her voice choked with emotion. "That I was scared? That I didn't want you to stay out of pity?" She had found out the diagnosis just days before they were set to sign the divorce papers. But their communication had broken down so completely, she didn't know how to tell him. She had been overwhelmed with fear, confusion, and uncertainty. She never imagined this moment unfolding the way it just had. Cole reached across the table, taking her hand in his. The touch felt so familiar, yet strangely distant after months of separation. It sent a shiver down her spine. "Do you want to know why our marriage came to this?" he asked softly. "Because we stopped fighting for each other. But I'm still here, Harper. And if there's one thing I've learned in this moment, it's that I don't want to lose you." His words hit Harper like crashing waves, sweeping away years of built-up hurt and resentment. As she looked into his eyes, she saw something she hadn't in a long time. It wasn't just a quiet love that settles after years of being together. It was something deeper, a love that endures, a love that fights through every storm, no matter how fierce. "I'm not going anywhere," Cole said, squeezing her hand. The lawyer, realizing there was no longer a divorce to finalize, cleared his throat discreetly. But Harper and Cole didn't notice. For them, in that moment, there was no one else in the room. "But what if—" Harper began, her voice trembling. Cole gently placed a finger against her lips, silencing her worries before they could take root. "No," he whispered. "Don't even think about it. We'll face this together, one day at a time." She nodded slowly, feeling the weight that had been pressing down on her for so long finally lift from her shoulders. It wouldn't be easy. She knew the road ahead would be difficult and filled with uncertainty. But now, she wouldn't have to walk it alone. The lawyer, realizing his work was done, quietly gathered the divorce papers and placed them in his briefcase. Harper and Cole remained seated, their hands intertwined, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Cole broke the silence. "Shall we go home?" he asked softly. Harper hesitated for a moment. Home. The word had taken on a new meaning. It was no longer just a place. It was a feeling. Safety. Comfort. Love. "Yes," she replied, a small smile forming. "Let's go home." They left the office hand in hand, leaving behind not just the divorce papers, but years of misunderstandings and unspoken words. The future remained uncertain, filled with challenges and obstacles, but now they would face it together. A new beginning. In the weeks and months that followed, Harper and Cole rediscovered the love that had once brought them together. The medical appointments, the grueling treatments, the nights filled with fear and uncertainty. It all brought them closer in ways they had never imagined. Cole was there through every step, holding her hand during chemotherapy, reading to her on nights when the pain kept her awake, constantly reminding her of her strength and beauty, even on the toughest days. In turn, Harper learned to appreciate life and love in a way she never had before. Every moment with Cole became more precious, every conversation more meaningful. They began to dream again, making plans for the future, no matter how uncertain it might be. Nearly 2 years after that fateful day in the lawyer's office, Harper received the news they had been waiting for. Remission. The cancer had regressed. Though the road ahead was still long, there was hope. That night, they celebrated with a simple dinner at home. As Harper sat across from him, Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know we're already married," he said, opening the box to reveal a delicate diamond ring. "But I want to renew our vows. I want to promise you again, with even more certainty, that I'll be by your side in sickness and in health, in good times and bad." Tears welled in Harper's eyes. She was too emotional to speak, so she simply nodded. Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, sealing his promise with a gentle kiss. Love renewed. Months later, in an intimate ceremony in the garden of their home, the same garden where they had shared so many memories, Harper and Cole renewed their vows, surrounded by friends and family. This time, the words in sickness and in health held a depth and meaning they could never have imagined years before. It wasn't just a phrase spoken during a ceremony. It was a promise lived, tested, strengthened through adversity. As they exchanged rings and glances filled with emotion, Harper and Cole knew that real love wasn't about perfection or always having happy moments. It was about choosing to stay, even when leaving would be easier. It was about finding beauty in difficult times, strength and vulnerability, and hope even on the darkest days. And with a kiss that sealed not just a new beginning, but also the journey that brought them there, Harper and Cole embarked on the next phase of their lives. The future was still uncertain, as it always is, but now they knew with unshakable certainty that they would face every challenge together, because in the end, it wasn't just the words spoken in the lawyer's office that had changed everything. It was the thousands of words, gestures, and moments they had shared since then. It was a love rediscovered, deepened, strengthened, a love stronger than any obstacle life could throw their way.